this month's Anger Cure, we are looking more deeply at the emotion of anger, where it comes from and how to deal with it. We start this week with the idea of anger as a secondary emotion. How many emotions can you name? 10, 20, 50? I expect if I gave you time, you could come up with a pretty big list. Psychologists have defined the concept of primary and secondary emotions. Primary emotions are the ones that are linked to our development as humans and that are applicable across all cultures. But there are only a handful of primary emotions: anger, fear, sadness and joy. So what does this mean about all the rest? Well, psychologists call these secondary emotions. These emotions are influenced by our family, our local community, and by our wider culture. Think of some of the stereotypes you hold about people from different cultures. The British stiff upper lip, the demonstrative Italians, the inward-looking Scandinavians, the inscrutable Japanese. Whilst I don't support such sweeping generalisations, these stereotypes hint at the fact that some emotions are more acceptable across different cultures, countries, and even in different families. This process is particularly strong when we start to look at our early upbringing within our family of origin. At a very early age, we learn that some emotions are useful to us and some are not. Imagine a young boy of 4 or 5 years old. Every time he cries, his parents become critical. They say things like, "Boys don't cry, be a man, don't be so weak." As you can imagine, very soon this boy would learn to understand that expressing sadness was neither useful nor acceptable. Now imagine the same boy gets angry and suddenly his parents are listening to him. It might be negative attention, but it's better than being ignored, right? So this boy grows up learning that expressing any emotion isn't great, but at least getting angry gets him attention and maybe occasionally gets him what he wants. Over time, he may unconsciously start to replace the feelings of sadness with feelings of anger. By the time he is an adult, he is no longer able to contact the feelings of sadness, and in situations where he may be expected to feel sad or vulnerable, his reaction becomes one of anger instead. Another name for secondary emotions is substitute emotions, because we learn to substitute an unacceptable emotion with one that is more acceptable. Eric Berne, the psychiatrist that developed transactional analysis, which is the type of therapy that I do, likens this process to the old protection rackets of the American mobsters. You know the kind of thing. Pay us to protect your business or we'll burn it down. So Berne called these emotions racket emotions. He said that the racket feeling was the price that we pay for not feeling a more unacceptable emotion. Take time to think about your own childhood. How did your parents respond when you got angry? How about when you felt scared or sad? The reason why this idea is important is because it is highly likely that your anger is a secondary emotion, a racket feeling. You know that feeling when your anger is inexhaustible. However much you express it, you rant and you rave, it just won't go away. That is often because you are expressing the racket emotion, not the underlying emotion of sadness or fear. For now, it doesn't matter whether your anger is primary or secondary. Either way, the long-term task you face is learning to understand the message your anger is giving you and to deal with it in a more proactive way. And we'll look at this in more detail in the videos throughout the rest of this month. Think of your anger as being like an iceberg. We used this example in a previous week. Your anger is the 10% that is visible above the ocean waves, the bit that everybody else gets to see. But under the sea, hidden from view, is the remaining 90%, often containing a whole host of other unexpressed emotions, such as sadness, shame, fear, rejection, and abandonment. One of my fellow transactional analysts, in a wonderful book she wrote, Sue Parker Hall, differentiates between anger and rage. We tend to think of them on a scale from frustrated and angry at one end to raging and bawling at the other end. But Sue Parker Hall talks about them as being completely different emotions. She defines anger as the appropriate here and now response to a threat, either physically or psychologically. In this scenario, anger is a natural part of the body's defence system that tells us that we need to take appropriate action to keep us safe. Many people struggle with expressing this anger appropriately, but it is an evolutionary human response. This is anger being expressed as a primary emotion. So Parker Hall defines rage as a bundle of emotions that we have historically been unable to express. These emotions get bottled up until they explode like a huge toxic volcano that erupts over everybody in close vicinity. This is a good example of a secondary emotion, and I suspect most people in the group actually have an issue with rage and not anger. So how does this help us move forward? Well, actually our task becomes to slowly untangle this knotty ball of emotions, identifying and expressing each individual strand. During your time in the Anger Cure, we will give you the tools to do exactly this. Now, I know that this can be a difficult subject to understand, so feel free to ask questions in the Facebook group. We'll do our best to answer them all. And over the rest of January, we're going to bring you a lot more tools and understanding around these ideas to really help you move forward with your anger management. I look forward to speaking to you in the group and to bringing you a new video next week. But for now, bye.